Hello everyone, just Goran here and welcome back to another Planet Zoo real life inspiration video, and today we are looking at the beautiful Bongo over here. We're getting started right away with the Zoo of Antwerp. And Antwerp has this very, city zoo-like enclosure with this stone wall with this metal railing on top and some glass viewing points in there as well, which is very nice for kids and people in wheelchairs. But yeah, very city zoo-like, but also a very nice natural enclosure. It's a shared habitat with the Kirk's dik we can see over there, and I really like how lush it is in the center there with all that bamboo. Gives the bongos nice places to hide away from the guests. I'm also a huge fan of this enormous tree that's just sitting in the middle over here. That's a feature right there. That is a great feature of this exhibit. And yeah, you can walk all the way around this circle pretty much. All the way up to this point where we can see the bongos kind of sitting in their stall in the back there and lying in between all the bamboo. Super cool. I've never really seen them up close at all. They're usually kind of hanging back there, but it's nice that they have the ability to kind of get away from the guests a bit. So yeah, pretty good. Then next up we have Blijdorp, Rotterdam Zoo. And in Blijdorp, of course we saw this in the real life zoo tour pretty recently. But Blijdorp has two bongo yards. They can separate them if need be. And they've got these cool little shade structures. They've got these awesome kind of janky looking fences with the chain link and all the bits of wood. Some wood bark flooring as well as a grassy area. It's just a really nice, interesting habitat. It's not humongous. It's not super detailed, but it's got all these nice little features that just make it a very solid habitat in my opinion. Yeah, so that was yard 1. Over here we can get a quick backstage peek around their stall, which is a very Blijdorp stall. This is just the kind of default Blijdorp stable or stall, which are all listed buildings, all monuments, so they can't really get rid of those. That's why they still look that way all these years later. But yeah, this is the second enclosure on the other side, which is very similar in both layout and furnishings. You've got the wood bark part, the grassy part, you've got the shade structure, all the same stuff really, and then we have an itchy bongo over there. So yeah, that is it for Blijdorp. Next up we have Duisburg, and this is actually really funny because last real life inspiration video we were across this habitat at the peccaries, and now we are looking at the bongo over here. And this is, once again, a pretty city zoo-like enclosure with these moats and getting really close up to the enclosure here. But just like in Antwerp, we have the bongos kind of sitting off all the way on the other side of the enclosure in their stall over there. Of course, I did visit the zoo in the winter, so it's a bit, barren looking. I do think there's not that much ground foliage in this one. I don't really see any of those like shoots of bamboo that Antwerp had, for example. But it does have quite a few trees, which is nice. And there's a bunch of these planters around the perimeter as well, which is pretty neat. But yeah, overall, just a pretty simple exhibit here too. It does have, once again, 2 separate yards. So we are now walking towards the second yard, which is on the other side, which is also actually what we started off at on the other side of this. But yeah, here you can also see into the stall. There's the bongo lying there. And yeah, pretty interesting terrain still, like quite a lot of stuff in the middle there to keep things interesting for the bongo too. But that is it for Duisburg. So next up we have GaiaZoo. And over here in GaiaZoo we walk up to this beautiful bongo habitat. We've got the bongo sitting there in a stall, and they've got a nice open area with a lot of foliage in between as well. So once again, nice places for them to hide. But there was a sign over here a year ago that they were no longer gonna house bongos for a little while because they just felt like this habitat was not up to the bongo standard anymore, and they were not really able to house multiple ones. This is also really cool to include. This is a nice little sand sculpture of a bongo. And there was also this statue over here for people who cannot see as well. There was some Braille explanation, and you can like touch the horns on the statue, which is really cool. But yeah, this year, a year later, as the last footage, the habitat still looks mostly the same, except that it has been opened up in the back. So they are working on it, working on making it bigger and suitable to house a breeding pair of bongos, I suppose. So yeah, there's a sign there explaining kind of what they are working on. And as you keep walking, you eventually get to the indoor viewing of the gorillas, where there used to be a red river hog habitat, but the red river hogs have moved to the rhino habitat, and the red river hog habitat is now going to be used as an expansion of this bongo habitat, because it's actually right behind what we were looking at earlier. So this is the indoor viewing of the gorillas, and then on the other side of that, there is a sign explaining that this will be, in the future, be used to house bongo. So yeah, that was it for GaiaZoo. Next up we have Monde Sauvage. And in Monde Sauvage, the bongos are in the car safari, which is pretty exciting. But yeah, as I've mentioned, I think in the hippo video, the car safari of Monde Sauvage is not really like the car safari of Beeksbergen, for instance, where you have many different habitats for different animals that you're driving through. It's also very bumpy, as you can tell. I could not hold my GoPro straight, even with the GoPro stabilization. But yeah, the car safari of Monde Sauvage is just one huge field with almost every African ungulate that you could probably think of. Like, we got the Watusi cattle, we got zebras, elands, oryxes, I think these are roan antelopes, and we also have the bongo, which we'll get to eventually. I'm just showing a bunch of the habitat as we're driving around here. So here you got all of the stalls in the back as well, but this habitat is absolutely huge. I mean, it has to be if you have this many animals on here, of course. But yeah, it's an enormous open green field with a bunch of trees thrown about, of course, and other bits of shade for the animals. But yeah, just crazy how big this habitat is. Like, if you want to see a good overview of it, I would suggest just going into Google Earth or Google Maps and looking at it through there. But here, finally, we have arrived at the bongos, which are all the way in the back. So you can also see kind of the fencing structure that is there, and even more birch forest back there, which looks really, really beautiful. But yeah, the bongos were just kind of hanging out over here and enjoying all of that delicious grass. So yeah, really cool to see them so up close, like over here. But that was pretty much it for Monde Sauvage. So we are going to move on to the next zoo. And we are moving to Germany, where we will go to the Allwetterzoo Münster, where we have a wonderfully lush exhibit. I mean, the exhibit itself is not that lush, but there's so much trees and forestry around this exhibit that it really, really feels suitable for such a rainforest animal like the bongo. And we've got 2 yards once again, both with a couple of viewing points. This being kind of the main one, and the previous one being more of a side thing to get an extra peek further into the back of the habitat. But yeah, this is a pretty decent habitat. We've got a bit of a moat in front, of course, to keep the animals away from the guests. There's just a bunch of logs and rocks scattered about, keeping things interesting. A bit of a natural wooden fence in the back with a bunch of foliage behind it, really making it feel natural and lush. And the viewing areas are kind of in between these little paths with a bunch of foliage around as well. And yeah, as you can see, this part of the zoo is really inside of this kind of, yeah, really foresty feeling area, which is just super, super nice. I really liked this part of the zoo in particular, especially here at the second yard for the bongo, where they've put down all of these logs throughout the habitat in between the trees to make it feel even more like densely populated, I guess. I don't know. So over here we've got the bongo really just enjoying some refreshment over there. Oh, look at that. Oh, he really enjoyed that one, or she, I don't know, I won't judge. But yeah, here we can see all of those logs kind of thrown around the enclosure, making it all that more dense, even though they're not actual trees. They're literally just logs. But I don't know, I really like the vibe that gave. I thought it was cool. I thought it was neat. So yeah, next up we have Ouwehands Dierenpark, and we are at the baboon habitat over here, because behind the baboon habitat we can see another enclosure, which is the bongo enclosure. And I think this is probably my least favorite of this video, to be honest, because it feels so like just jammed in there and it doesn't feel big at all. It's, I don't know, I'm not a fan. Anyway, you go through the aquarium, then you come into this aviary where you have another viewing point, and here we can see they do have 2 separate yards for the bongo, both equally tiny feeling, in my opinion. I don't know, it just feels so crammed and yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. It's there's one thing I am a fan of here, which is the indoor area, which we'll get to in a second, after we watch this bongo enjoying their little meal over here. It's just crazy to me that a zoo like GaiaZoo has this beautiful enclosure, and it's like, yeah, no, we don't feel like this is up to par. We're gonna improve it, and then you go here and you just see this, and it's not horrible, I guess, but I don't know. I just think it's definitely the worst habitat in this video, right? Like, there's no denying that. Anyway, in the indoor area, it's pretty cool. You've got these small little circular windows that just give you a peek into the bongo habitat. The indoor area is also really nice looking in general, but yeah, especially these little peeks into the indoor stall, I think are really, really neat. I'm a big fan of them, so I thought that was very cool. So good job on that, at least, Ouwehands. Next up, we have Zoo Planckendael, which is the last zoo that we're visiting, but not the last habitat, because this is the old bongo habitat. This is like a year or two ago at this point. We got this really nice, kind of, not lush, but forested enclosure. Lots of trees, at least, and very, quite interesting. It is very flat. It's very, kind of empty and not the most interesting. It's also shape-wise, it's just another circle, similar to Antwerp. But you did get good views of the bongo. They were actually... This is one of the places where I've gotten the closest to bongo. This and Blijdorp probably. Because a few times it happened to me that the bongo were like right up to the fence here. So that's actually super cool. But yeah, they recently did some reconstruction in this area, and that habitat is now actually part of the Somali wild ass enclosure. And the bongo have gotten a whole new enclosure over here. And it looks really quite nice. I really like the overall shape of it. It's much more interesting than what it used to be. You also got a much more open view into it instead of having to look through the mesh fence. So that is, overall just an improvement, I would say. The only critique I think I have is that it's a lot more open, where the last enclosure was very nice and forested with all the trees in the enclosure. Whereas this one is, it's a bit more open. It's less lush. There is a bit of bamboo and small trees and stuff. Of course, all of that stuff still has to grow in a lot. But I don't know, I feel like I would like to see a little bit more of that as well. But overall, I would say it's definitely an improvement and a very nice habitat, and a really inspiring one for this video as well. So nice one to end it all off with. But yeah, one thing with the openness that I immediately noticed, and maybe that's just because it's a new enclosure as well, but the bongos were kind of hiding a lot more. I did not see them in the enclosure at all. They were kind of just hiding in the bushes. And maybe that's also because they had a baby. Ooh. So yeah, that might be also part of the reason why. No real way to know, really. But yeah, we can see them lying in the bottom left just now. But that is it for this video. So here we got the baby bongo lying in the bushes. And that's where we're going to end off this video. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!